The train's whistle screamed through the dusk, a sound so sharp it could slice through memory itself. Elena stood frozen on the platform, her heart pounding as she watched the last carriage disappear into the horizon, carrying her family away without her grandmother. She clutched the crumpled note in her pocket, the one Grandma Rose had slipped her before they left her behind, its words burning like a promise. "You're my heart, Elena. Don't let them break you." The terminal in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, was a ghost of its former self, its faded wooden benches and rusted signs whispering of better days. Elena, 28, stood alone, her chestnut hair catching the last rays of the setting sun. Her brown eyes, usually warm, were clouded with fury and grief. Her family, her parents, her brother, her aunts had done the unthinkable. They'd abandoned Grandma Rose, the woman who'd raised her, loved her, seen her when no one else had. They'd left her at this very station, claiming she was too much to handle, too stubborn, too old. But Elena knew the truth. They'd discarded her because Rose had dared to love her granddaughter's truth, her love for another woman. Sarah's hand found hers, fingers lacing tightly, grounding her. At 30, Sarah was a force, blonde hair cropped short, green eyes sharp enough to cut through lies, and a leather jacket that seemed to carry the weight of every battle she'd fought. "They're cowards," Sarah said, her voice low but fierce. "But we're here now. We'll find her." Elena nodded, her throat tight. She couldn't lose Rose, not after everything. It had started 3 weeks ago, when Elena came out to her family. The dinner table had erupted, her father's face red with rage, her mother's tears falling in silence, her brother muttering about family values. Only Grandma Rose, 78 and frail but with a spirit like steel, had reached for Elena's hand under the table. "Love is love," she'd whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos. That moment had cost Rose everything. The family, led by Elena's father, decided she was a bad influence. They'd packed her bags, driven her to the terminal, and left her there with nothing but a ticket to nowhere and a promise to sort it out later. Later never came. Elena's phone buzzed, snapping her back to the present. A text from her cousin Mia, the only one who hadn't turned away. "They're saying Grandma's in a shelter in Harrisburg." "I'm sorry," Elena's stomach churned. Harrisburg was an hour away, and the thought of Rose, her Rose, who'd baked her cookies and taught her to dance in the kitchen alone in a shelter, made her want to scream. Sarah squeezed her hand. "We're going. Now." The drive to Harrisburg was quiet, the kind of silence that held too much to say. Elena stared out the window of Sarah's old pickup, the Pennsylvania countryside blurring past rolling hills, fading barns, the last of autumn's leaves clinging to branches. She thought of Rose's stories, the ones she'd told Elena late at night when the world felt too heavy. Rose had grown up in the 1950s, a time when love was a battlefield for anyone who dared to be different. She'd never married, never spoken of her own heart, but Elena had seen the way her eyes softened when she spoke of a friend from her youth, a woman named Clara who'd vanished from her life. Elena wondered if Rose had loved her too, in silence. Sarah broke the silence. "You okay?" Her voice was soft now, the edge gone. Elena turned, meeting those green eyes that had first caught her heart 2 years ago at a bookstore in Pittsburgh. Sarah had been flipping through a poetry collection, her lips moving slightly as she read, and Elena had been captivated. They'd built something real since then, something worth fighting for. "I'm scared," Elena admitted. "What if we're too late? What if she couldn't finish?" "She's a fighter," Sarah said. "Like you." She reached over, resting a hand on Elena's knee. The touch was an anchor, pulling her back from the edge of despair. They drove on, the truck's headlights cutting through the gathering dark. The shelter in Harrisburg was a squat, gray building, its fluorescent lights harsh against the night. Elena's heart sank as they stepped inside, the air thick with the smell of bleach and desperation. A tired-looking woman at the front desk glanced up. "You here for someone?" she asked, her voice flat. "Rose Martinez," Elena said, her voice trembling but firm. "She's my grandmother." The woman typed something into a computer, her brow furrowing. "She was here," she said finally. "But she left yesterday. Said she had somewhere to go." Elena's knees buckled and Sarah caught her, steadying her with a strong arm. "Where?" Sarah demanded. The woman shrugged. "Didn't say. Just took her suitcase and walked out. Said something about a house in Willow Creek." Elena's mind raced. Rose's old house, the one she'd lived in before the family forced her into assisted living, was still in Willow Creek. It was empty now, or so they'd thought. Could she have gone back there? It was a long shot, but it was all they had. They drove back to Willow Creek, the night pressing in around them. Elena's thoughts were a storm, guilt for not fighting harder, anger at her family, fear for Rose. Sarah kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on Elena's thigh, a silent promise. We'll get through this. When they reached Rose's old house, a small craftsman with peeling paint and a sagging porch, the windows were dark. Elena's heart sank. But then she saw a flicker of light in the living room. Faint but unmistakable. They parked and ran to the door, Elena's hands shaking as she knocked. Grandma? It's me, Elena. The door creaked open and there she was, Rose, her silver hair pulled back, her face lined but fierce. Oh, my girl, she whispered, pulling Elena into a hug that smelled of lavender and home. Sarah stood back, giving them their moment, but her eyes were soft with relief. Rose led them inside, her steps slow but steady. The house was cold, the furniture covered in dust sheets, but Rose had lit a small lamp, casting a warm glow. I knew you'd come, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I told them I didn't need their pity. I have you. Elena's tears fell freely now. Why didn't you call me? We've been so worried. Rose's eyes twinkled, a spark of her old mischief. Didn't want to bother you, not when you're building a life with this one. She nodded at Sarah, who grinned. Besides, Rose continued, I had to take care of something. She gestured to a wooden box on the coffee table, its surface worn but polished. Open it, she said. Elena hesitated, then lifted the lid. Inside were papers, legal documents, a will, and a letter addressed to her. Her hands trembled as she read the words. To my beloved granddaughter, Elena Marie Martinez, I leave everything, me house, my savings, my heart. Live your truth always. Elena looked up, tears blurring her vision. Grandma, you. Rose took her hand, her grip surprisingly strong. They thought they could erase me, erase you. But this is ours. This house, this life, it's yours now, yours and Sarah's. Build something beautiful here. Sarah stepped closer, her arm around Elena's shoulders. We will, she said, her voice steady. We'll make it ours. Rose smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. That's my girls. The night stretched on, the three of them sitting together, talking, laughing, healing. Outside, the world was cold and unforgiving, but inside that small house, love was a fire that refused to go out. Elena knew this was only the beginning. There would be battles ahead, with her family, with the world. But with Sarah by her side and Rose's legacy in her hands, she felt unbreakable. The morning light filtered through the dusty curtains of Rose's house, casting a soft glow on the wooden box that held her will. Elena sat at the kitchen table, the papers spread out before her, each word a testament to her grandmother's defiance. She traced her fingers over Rose's handwriting, feeling the weight of a legacy that was both a gift and a challenge. Sarah was in the kitchen, brewing coffee in an old pot they'd found in the cupboard. The scent filled the air, grounding Elena in the moment. She left you everything, Sarah said, setting a mug in front of her. This house, her savings, it's a lot to take in. Elena nodded, her mind still reeling. The house was modest but sturdy, a two-bedroom craftsman filled with memories of summers spent with Rose, baking pies and listening to her stories. The savings, though not vast, were enough to start over, to build something new. But the real treasure was the letter, its words etched in Elena's heart. Live your truth. Rose shuffled into the kitchen, her slippers soft against the worn floorboards. She looked friendlier in the daylight, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes were bright with purpose. You're not mad at me, are you? She asked, her voice teasing but tinged with worry. Elena reached for her hand. Mad? Grandma, you're the only one who's ever fought for me. Rose chuckled, easing into a chair. I fought for myself too, you know. Back in my day you didn't talk about certain things. But I saw you, Elena, and I saw Sarah, and I thought maybe it's time the world caught up. She paused, her gaze distant. I wish I'd been braver when I was younger. For Clara. Elena's heart skipped. Clara again. Who was she, Grandma? She asked softly. Rose's smile was bittersweet. My best friend. Maybe more if I'd let myself admit it. We were inseparable in '58, working at the textile mill together. But her family moved her away, and I never saw her again. I didn't fight for her. I won't make that mistake with you. Sarah sat down, her presence steadying them both. You're fighting now, she said. That's what matters. Rose reached across the table, squeezing Sarah's hand. You're a good one, Sarah. Keep her safe. The moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Elena tensed, her mind flashing to her family. Had they come back? Sarah stood, her jaw tight. I'll get it. She opened the door to find Mia, Elena's cousin, standing on the porch, her dark curls pulled back, her eyes nervous but kind. I had to come, Mia said, stepping inside. I couldn't let them do this to you, to Grandma. She hugged Elena tightly, then turned to Rose. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I should have stopped them. Rose waved her off. You're here now, child. That's enough. Mia's visit brought news that made Elena's blood run cold. Her father, Richard, was furious about Rose's will. He'd called a family meeting, claiming the will was invalid, that Rose wasn't in her right mind when she wrote it. They're planning to contest it, Mia said, her voice low. They're saying you manipulated her, Elena. That you and Sarah. She trailed off, her cheeks flushing. That we what? Sarah's voice was sharp, protective. Mia hesitated. That you too. Influenced her. They're saying Grandma wouldn't have done this if you hadn't confused her. Elena's hands clenched into fists. The accusation stung, not because it was true, but because it twisted Rose's love into something ugly. They can try, Rose said, her voice cutting through the tension. But I wrote that will years ago, when Elena was still in college. My lawyer, Mr. Thompson, has the original. They won't win. Her eyes gleamed with defiance. They abandoned me. They don't get to claim what's mine. Elena felt a surge of pride, but also fear. Her family was relentless, her father's pride. Her mother's silence, her brother's judgment. They wouldn't let this go easily. We need to see Mr. Thompson, she said. Today. The lawyer's office was in downtown Willow Creek, a small brick building squeezed between a diner and a hardware store. Mr. Thompson, a wiry man in his 60s with kind eyes, welcomed them warmly. Rose, you're looking well, he said, shaking her hand. He pulled out a file, confirming what Rose had said. The will was airtight, signed and notarized 5 years ago. Your family can contest it, he warned, but they'll have a hard time proving you were incompetent, Rose. You're sharper than most of my clients. Elena exhaled, relief mixing with dread. What happens if they fight it? She asked. Mr. Thompson leaned back. It'll go to court. Could take months, maybe years. They'll drag up everything, your life, your relationship. He glanced at Sarah, then back at Elena. Are you ready for that? Sarah's hand found Elena's under the table, their fingers interlocking. We're ready, Sarah said, her voice unwavering. Elena nodded, though her heart raced. She wasn't just fighting for the house or the money, she was fighting for Rose. For their love, for the right to exist as they were. Back at the house, they began to settle in. Sarah and Elena cleaned, uncovering memories with every dust sheet. They pulled a photo of Elena as a child, grinning with a missing tooth, a quilt Rose had sewn decades ago. Mia stayed to help, her presence a quiet apology for the family's betrayal. But as night fell, Elena's phone buzzed again. A voicemail from her father. Elena, this isn't over. You're tearing this family apart. Come to the house tomorrow, or we'll take this to court. Elena's hand shook as she played the message on speaker. Sarah's jaw tightened, but Rose's voice was calm. Let them come, she said. They've underestimated us before. Elena looked at her grandmother, then at Sarah, and felt a fire ignite within her. This was their home now, their fight. And they wouldn't back down. The air in Rose's house felt heavier the next morning, as if the walls themselves knew a storm was coming. Elena stood at the window, watching the quiet street, her stomach knotted with anticipation. Her father's ultimatum echoed in her mind. Come to the house or we'll take this to court. Sarah was outside, fixing a loose board on the porch, her movements deliberate, her focus a shield against the tension. Elena admired her strength, the way she could channel anger into action. At 30, Sarah had faced her own battles. Disowned by her parents at 18, she'd built a life on her own terms, working as a mechanic and carving out a space where she could be herself. Meeting Elena had been a turning point, a chance to believe in love again. Now they were fighting together and Elena drew courage from that. Rose was in the living room, sorting through old letters, her hands steady despite her age. "Don't let them scare you, Elena," she called out. "Your father's all bluster. Always has been." Elena managed a small smile, but her father's voice, cold, commanding, still haunted her. Richard Martinez was a man who valued control above all else, and Elena's coming out had shattered that. Leaving Rose at the terminal was his way of punishing them both. The drive to her parents' house felt like a march to war. Sarah drove, her grip tight on the wheel, while Elena sat beside her, clutching Rose's letter for strength. The suburbs of Willow Creek unfolded around them, neat lawns, white picket fences, a facade of perfection that hid so much. When they pulled into the driveway, Elena's heart thudded. The house, a two-story colonial, loomed like a judgment. Her father answered the door, his face a mask of disapproval. "You brought her," he said, glancing at Sarah. Elena's mother, Linda, hovered behind him, her eyes downcast. Her brother Mark stood in the living room, arms crossed, his expression mirroring their father's. The air was thick with tension, and Elena felt Sarah's hand brush hers, a reminder they were in this together. "Sit," Richard said, gesturing to the couch. Elena and Sarah stayed standing. "We're here to talk about Grandma," Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. "You left her at the terminal. How could you?" Richard's eyes narrowed. "She was causing trouble, Elena. You know that. She's been filling your head with nonsense, encouraging this." He gestured vaguely at Sarah, who didn't flinch. "We did what was best for the family." "Best for the family?" Elena's voice rose, anger breaking through. "You abandoned her. She's 78, Dad. She raised me when you were too busy, when Mom was too scared to stand up to you. And now you're trying to take her legacy because you don't approve of me." Linda's eyes flicked up, a flicker of guilt crossing her face, but she said nothing. Mark stepped forward. "You're the one tearing us apart, Elena. You and your lifestyle. Grandma's will is a mistake." She wasn't thinking straight. Sarah's voice cut through, sharp and clear. "Rose was thinking straighter than any of you. She left everything to Elena because she loves her, because she trusts her. You don't get to erase that because it doesn't fit your narrative." Richard's face reddened. "This isn't about love. It's about what's right. That house, that money, it's family property. We're contesting the will, Elena. And we'll win." Elena's hands shook, but she held her ground. "You can try. But Grandma's will is legal, and we have her lawyer. You left her to die, Dad. You don't get to claim her now." She turned to her mother, pleading. "Mom, please. Say something." Linda's lips parted, but no words came. The silence was a knife. Sarah took Elena's arm. "Let's go," she said softly. "They've made their choice." As they walked out, Elena felt the weight of her family's rejection, but also a spark of defiance. She wasn't alone anymore. Back at Rose's house, they found Mia waiting with a surprise. A stack of letters from Clara, tied with a faded ribbon. Rose's eyes widened as she took them, her fingers trembling. "Where did you find these?" she whispered. Mia smiled. "In the attic. I thought you might want them." That night, Rose read the letters aloud, her voice trembling with emotion. Clara's words were a window into a love that had been silenced by time and fear, promises of a future they never got to share, dreams of a world where they could be free. Elena listened, her heart aching for Rose, for Clara, for all the loves that had been hidden. Sarah sat beside her, their hands entwined, a silent vow to live differently. The next day, Elena and Sarah began transforming the house. They painted the walls, fixed the creaky floors, and planted flowers in the garden. It was slow work, but each step felt like a reclaiming, a way to honor Rose's gift. Mia came by often, bringing food and stories, her loyalty a bridge between Elena's past and her future. But the threat of the court battle loomed, a shadow over their progress. Mr. Thompson called with an update. Richard had filed a formal challenge to the will, claiming undue influence. The hearing was set for next month. "They're digging into your life," he warned Elena. "Your relationship with Sarah, your history with Rose. They'll try to paint you as manipulators." Elena's stomach twisted, but Sarah's voice was steady. "Let them try. We've got the truth." As the days passed, Elena found strength in small moments. Sarah's laughter as they painted the kitchen, Rose's stories of resilience, Mia's quiet support. The house was becoming a home again, a sanctuary for their love. But Elena knew the fight was far from over. Her family's betrayal had left scars, and the battle for Rose's legacy would test them all. The courtroom in Harrisburg was a sterile place, all polished wood and cold fluorescent lights, a far cry from the warmth of Rose's house. Elena sat beside Sarah, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, as Mr. Thompson reviewed their case. Rose was there too, her silver hair pulled back, her presence a quiet force. At 78, she shouldn't have had to fight, but her eyes burned with determination. The hearing began with Richard's lawyer, a slick man named Carter, laying out their case. He painted Rose as confused, manipulated by Elena and Sarah's agenda. He called witnesses Elena's brother Mark, who claimed Rose had been unstable for years, a neighbor who said Rose had seemed off before she was left at the terminal. Each word was a dagger, twisting the truth into something ugly. Elena felt Sarah's hand tighten around hers, a lifeline in the storm. When it was their turn, Mr. Thompson called Rose to the stand. She moved slowly, her cane tapping the floor, but her voice was clear. "I wrote that will 5 years ago," she said, her gaze steady. "I knew exactly what I was doing. Elena is my heart, the only one who ever saw me for me. I left everything to her because she deserves it, because she's brave enough to love who she loves, despite what this family thinks." The room was silent, the weight of her words settling over everyone. Elena's throat tightened, pride and love swelling in her chest. Mr. Thompson presented the will, the notarized documents, and letters from Rose's doctor confirming her mental clarity. Carter tried to rattle Rose, questioning her memory, her intentions, but she didn't waver. "You don't get to tell me what my love means," she said, her voice cutting through his bluster. Elena was next. She took the stand, her heart pounding, aware of her family's eyes on her father's glare, her mother's averted gaze, Mark's scowl. "Grandma raised me," she said, her voice trembling but growing stronger. "She was there when no one else was. When I told her I loved Sarah, she didn't judge me. She loved me more. You left her at that terminal because she stood by me, and now you're trying to take away the one thing she gave me. But I won't let you." Sarah's testimony was fierce, her green eyes blazing as she spoke of their love, their commitment, their plans for the house. "We're building a home," she said. "Not just for us, but for Rose, for everyone who's ever been told their love is wrong. You can't take that from us." The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, listened carefully. She asked questions, probed both sides, and called for a recess to review the evidence. Outside, Elena leaned against Sarah, the weight of the day pressing down. Rose joined them, her hand on Elena's shoulder. "You did good, my girl," she said. "Both of you." Mia was there too, sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom, her presence a small rebellion against the family. She approached them during the recess, her eyes red. "I told them they're wrong," she whispered. "I told Mom and Dad I'm with you." Elena hugged her, tears spilling over. It wasn't much, but it was something, a crack in the wall of rejection. When the judge returned, her ruling was clear. The will stood. Rose's mental capacity was undisputed, and there was no evidence of undue influence. Richard's face fell, his anger palpable, but Linda's expression was unreadable. Mark stormed out, but Elena caught her mother's eye for a moment, a flicker of something, maybe regret, before she looked away. Back at the house, they celebrated quietly. Sarah opened a bottle of wine, and Rose told stories of her youth, her laughter filling the room. The victory was bittersweet. Elena had won the house, the money, but her family was still fractured. Yet as she looked at Sarah, at Rose, at Mia, she realized she had a new family, one built on love, not judgment. They spent the next weeks making the house their own. Sarah built a bookshelf for Elena's novels, and Elena planted a rose garden in honor of her grandmother. Rose, though frail, seemed to come alive, her stories flowing freely now, tales of Clara, of secret dances, of a love that had shaped her. Elena listened, her heart full, knowing she was carrying that legacy forward. But the peace was fragile. One night, Elena found a letter slipped under the door, unsigned but unmistakably from her father. "You've won this round, but don't think it's over." The words chilled her, a reminder that love, even victorious, came with a cost. She showed the letter to Sarah, who crumpled it in her fist. "Let him try," she said. We're stronger than he thinks. Rose overheard, her eyes narrowing. He's always been a bully, she said. But bullies only win if you let them. You two keep loving, keep fighting. That's how you beat him. Elena nodded, her resolve hardening. She looked at Sarah at the home they were building and knew Rose was right. This was their fight and they were ready. Spring arrived in Willow Creek, painting the hills with green and coaxing blooms from the rose garden Elena had planted. The house, once a shadow of itself, now hummed with life-fresh paint on the walls, new curtains fluttering in the breeze, and the laughter of 3 women who'd chosen each other. Elena stood in the garden, her hands in the soil, feeling the earth's pulse beneath her fingers. At 28, she was learning what it meant to build a home, not just for herself and Sarah, but for Rose, whose legacy was the foundation of it all. Sarah was in the garage, tinkering with her motorcycle, her blonde hair tied back, her hands smudged with grease. At 30, she was the anchor Elena hadn't known she needed. Her strength a quiet promise that they could face anything. Rose sat on the porch, a quilt over her lap, her silver hair catching the sunlight. At 78, she was slower now, her body betraying her, but her spirit was unbreakable. She watched Elena and Sarah with a smile, her eyes bright with pride. The court victory had given them the house and Rose's savings, but it hadn't healed the rift with Elena's family. Richard's letter had been a warning, and though months had passed without another move, Elena felt the tension lingering, a storm waiting to break. Mia was their only bridge to the family, visiting often, her loyalty a quiet defiance. She'd brought news that Linda, Elena's mother, was struggling with the family's actions, but Richard and Mark remained unyielding. One afternoon, as Elena and Sarah cooked dinner, Rose called them to the living room. She held a small journal, its pages yellowed with age. "Clara's," she said, her voice soft. "I found it in the attic. I want you to read it." They sat together, the journal open between them, Clara's words weaving a story of love and loss. She'd written of Rose, of stolen moments in the 1950s, of a world that wouldn't let them be. The final entry was a goodbye written before Clara's family took her away. "I'll always carry you, Rose. Be free for both of us." Elena's tears fell, and Sarah's arm slipped around her. Rose's voice was steady. "I wasn't free then. But you two are reliving the life I couldn't. That's why I gave you everything. Not just the house but the chance to be who you are." That night they held a small ceremony in the garden, planting a new rose bush for Clara. Rose spoke her name, her voice breaking, and Elena felt the weight of history, of loves lost and found. They stood together, 3 generations of courage, their hands linked under the stars. The peace was shattered a week later when a lawyer's letter arrived, announcing a new challenge to the will. Richard claimed new evidence, letters from Rose's past, twisted to suggest instability. Elena's heart sank, but Sarah's eyes blazed. "They're desperate," she said. "They're grasping at straws." Mr. Thompson confirmed it. The challenge was weak, but it would drag them back to court. The second hearing was quieter, the fight more personal. Richard took the stand, his voice cold as he spoke of family honor and protecting Rose's legacy. Elena watched her mother, Linda, in the gallery, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly. When Elena testified, she spoke from the heart. "This isn't about money or a house. It's about love, Grandma's love for me, my love for Sarah, our love for her. You can't take that from us." The judge's ruling came quickly. The new challenge was dismissed. Richard's face was a mask of defeat, but Linda stood, her voice trembling as she spoke for the first time. "I'm sorry, Elena," she said. "I was wrong. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start." Mark walked out, but Elena felt a flicker of hope. Back at the house, they rebuilt their sanctuary. Sarah proposed to Elena in the rose garden, under the same stars where they'd honored Clara. The ring was simple, a band of silver, but it held a promise. Forever, no matter what. Rose officiated their small wedding, her voice strong as she blessed their union. Mia was there, tears in her eyes, and Linda sent a letter, a tentative step toward reconciliation. As summer faded, Rose's health declined. She spent more time on the porch, her journal in her lap, her stories now for Elena and Sarah to carry. One evening as the sun set, she took their hands. "You've made me proud," she said. "You've made this old house a home again." She passed quietly that night, her hand in Elena's, her face peaceful. Elena and Sarah buried her beside the rose garden, under the bush they'd planted for Clara. The house was theirs now fully, but it was a testament to love's resilience, to the courage of those who dared to be themselves. Elena's family was still distant, but Linda's letter had opened a door, and Mia's visits were a bridge. The world wasn't perfect, but in that small house in Willow Creek, Elena and Sarah had built something unbreakably, a love that honored Rose, Clara, and every heart that had fought to be free. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.